Hey everybody, it's that time again. It's Deep Dive Zone, a Sonic the Hedgehog reread series for fans of all shapes and sizes. As usual, I'm your host Evan, joined by my comrades Lauren and Bruce, and today we have got some surreal Archie Sonic comics.
I guess surreal?
Uh,
Yeah,
the first one, Sonic number 35, definitely is.
That's true.
oh yeah, I suppose you could say that.
The lead story for this one is Ring of Truth, which is a Gallagher and Monic joint, of course. You can see the Ancient Walkers on the cover. That's gonna be them. When Sonic picks up his billionth power ring, it transports him to an ethereal plane where he interacts with the Ancient Walkers and gets cryptic hints about things. I guess.
It's more like they spout like stuff that sounds wise, but I
Doesn't
don't
really-
remember it going anywhere.
Oh, okay, good. That's great to know.
Yeah, what could be better than learning the main story of an issue is completely pointless?
Uh,
Actually, no, I think Sonic's billionth ring is a technical plot point, but it's so dumb.
Well, so that may be relevant, but I mean the ancient walkers are just like basically throwing him around for no reason. The whole adventure doesn't mean anything.
right. So I did the math on the whole billionth ring thing.
Oh,
That's
yeah?
absurd.
It's not physically possible.
No, not even if you moved as fast as Sonic.
Right. So I was reading this issue with my girlfriend on Monday, and the moment I got to that, we immediately started trying to figure out how could have Sonic collected a billion rings, because we don't really know how long they've been fighting Robotnik. And I think it's a safe assumption to say that Sonic was not actively collecting rings before the coup. So we did the math. If he was collecting 100 rings a day, it would take him 76 years. 300 rings a day is 25 years, and 1,000 rings a day is still 7.5 years. So,
To add to all this, we've, had enough time pass in the comic proper that
Sure.
even if you were collecting rings that whole time, there would be huge gaps.
right. It's not physically possible for Sonic to have collected his billionth ring. I could believe it if they'd said millionth,
Yeah, maybe.
but that's pushing it, but I think it's possible. But billionth is not realistic.
For anyone uninformed listening, this is also why we don't view billionaires as legitimate.
Jesus Christ.
So you're right. However, you're forgetting to account for the fact that it's stated that Sonic moves faster than the speed of light. So on top of the speed limit having no upper limit, when you go faster than the speed of light, time shenanigans happen. So who knows?
That's true. Relativity needs to be taken into account. I assume Sonic isn't always going at the speed of light, though. I kind of average his speed out at about the speed of sound, usually.
Well,
I
no,
mean,
but
it depends
off
on-
panel, he must be collecting tons of rings. That has to be
I
the
mean,
idea.
clearly. I mean,
Because he's
obviously.
not shown very much in the stories.
Right. So I guess off screen he has to be collecting tons of rings, but it feels physically wrong.
He just knows how to do, item duplication bugs.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Just got to overflow the ring counter.
Exactly. You gotta get a nice overflow glitch.
Listen, we will see glitches canonized into Sonic material before the end of this thing, so...
That is awesome.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So the whole billionth member is a fair point, but something that confuses me equally so is the fact that apparently Robotnik tracks every single ring Sonic collects. Like how?
Yeah, that's
yeah,
also
what the
a
hell?
very good question. I didn't even think about that because I kind of assume Robotnik is just always tracking what Sonic does.
What if he collects
Yeah,
a ring in the Great Forest where he's supposed to be hidden away?
The logistics
I don't
of it
know.
are difficult either way.
I think Robotnik might just be inept.
True. He's just the
Just call it
Saturday
a
morning
hunch.
cartoon villain syndrome.
Yeah. Just
Hey,
just call it a hunch.
Speaking of inept, this is our last issue to be edited by the editor for most of these early issues, Scott Fulop. We're going to start
Oh?
seeing Freddie Mendez later, who is going to then be credited as Freddie Mendez Gabri, and eventually Justin F. Gabri, his real name, and he's going to stick around for a really long time. I guess it's the next issue where he starts showing up, but we've been complaining about the editing for a while now, and it's not going to get any better.
Oh, damn. I was about to ask if it gets better.
It gets a different kind of bad that might be preferable.
Oh, okay. Alright, fair enough.
So
Anyway.
there's a lore note at the beginning when Sonic drops a bunch of rings. where he says, "Oh, darn, the rings are disappearing because they're reabsorbed by the zone," which I think is a pretty cool explanation, actually,
Yeah.
for how that works in the games.
I think that makes perfect sense in the context of the games.
So Sonic's ring takes him to he chats, well, sort of talks to each of the ancient walkers. It's more like he says things and they don't respond in the way that any normal person would.
Right. They basically ignore him.
Gotta get that test of wisdom or whatever.
Sort of. It's pseudo philosophy is what it is.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
I want to find meaning in any of this, but I don't have much other than the revelation that yes, rings and chaos emeralds are connected. That will be important technically, but you know they're talking at him in so many different forms of cryptic, but it doesn't go anywhere.
You know, I may not be giving this enough credit. That's true, actually. That I do like that bit of lore. I think it makes sense.
That lore does kind of make sense. Like that's not really a problem.
Yeah.
But overall, Sonic is just getting yanked around a lot. And I literally made a note, you know, this reminds me a lot of Vertigo a Go Go. And then there's an editor's note saying, or no, Sonic mentions it, that this is a lot like the Vertical and Horizontal adventure. I'm just like, they were aware of what they were doing and they did it anyway.
Well, because they were proud of that story for some reason.
Apparently.
Yeah, I don't get it.
They don't know how stupid it was.
Well, so the writers seem to very much, I hate this term, they like to smell their own farts, it seems like.
They think very highly of themselves. I guess probably just because the comic made a lot of money, which it did.
Probably. Yeah, that's probably the safest assumption.
You are absolutely correct, because when Sonic sees the Ancient Walkers, he's like, oh, it's the Ancient Walkers. I remember Tails talking about them. And it says, remember, from the highly acclaimed Tails miniseries, in the editor note. Like,
yeah.
Wow, you really had to say it that way.
They really love tooting their own horns.
It was probably higher acclaimed than the Sally series, which is to say it sold better because Tails was on the cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it still wasn't good enough to spawn a, an ongoing series. So yeah, maybe we just need a degree in crypto philosophy, but it's like this is coming from the guy who last week gave us antibodies and the French virus. I'm pretty sure that we're not the problem here.
I honestly don't believe that they were trying to make this intricate super thing. They were just trying to make it seem intricate.
I think that's a pretty safe assumption.
Because literally at the end, like, you cannot interpret this as any way except you just got dunked on, like, it was all for nothing. There's nothing to it. It was just insanity. When Sonic gets, like, his perfect question or whatever, it's like, you may ask one question. It's like, just one? And they're like, yes! And he loses this question. Like, why would you make it add up to nothing except to demonstrate that it adds up to nothing?
Oh, that was so annoying.
What's your opinion about this ethereal episode? Send us your scholarly Sonic grams. Fuck you.
Saw that too.
Hey, nobody did. We don't get more stories like this.
Good.
Anyway, so that's that story. We have 1 billion rings now, apparently, even though we haven't been collecting them for most of this story. I guess maybe he got, like 900 million rings in the Supersonic versus Hyper Knuckles issue, and this is just the rest of them adding up.
Yeah, that'd be my guess. That's the only thing that makes sense.
You know, I forgot about that. That does make some degree of sense.
It doesn't add up still, because they only mentioned collecting, what was that, 100 rings?
I don't know.
Well, just to go super, but I mean, when you're getting punched by Knuckles over and over, you got to keep those rings.
True.
Oh, that's the continuity error of that issue, is that Knuckles should be able to knock the super out of Sonic in his base form.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, it's because when he goes hyper, he loses that ability. He's actually more effective against super characters in his base form.
Finally, Archie is not overpowering its characters. Speaking of overpowered characters, the other story in this issue is part 2 of A Sense of History, written and drawn by Penders, which is Knuckles recapping more of Echidna history, focusing mainly on the fall of high society at the hands of Edmund and Dimitri.
So I remember this one because it's like, I'll show them all. I'll just turn into a god with the Chaos Emeralds. Yes, that sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, so The story here is that Edmund and Dimitri are two brother scientist guys, and they're like, well, shit. Angel Island has been up here for a while. We should probably put it back down because we, don't want to like die. And it's been there for like hundreds of years, I think. So it's like you're probably going to run out of resources without access to the rest of the world. I don't think they say that because I think it's still, a utopian super sci-fi society, but
yeah, it is.
Their plan to put it back down basically gets rejected by the Council of Echidna people or whatever. And so they're like, well, shoot, what are we going to do? And Dimitri decides, well, screw it, I'm just going to try and do it anyway. And then that's not quite what he does. Instead, he uses the Chaos Siphon, which is a big mask. It looks like a giant like welding mask or something.
It's a wonderfully stupid name.
In any case, he uses it on the emeralds, and that fills him with Chaos Emerald energy, and he becomes this Echidna demigod or whatever. But then he just decides to be evil?
He's got to have been corrupted or something.
It's like Dingo from Sonic Underground.
I suppose it must be.
Well, it's the same thing, so it makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense is, okay, so the Chaos Siphon, right? It's supposed to siphon off power. If he didn't intend to turn himself into a god, which by his own words, he says it was an accident, which I don't understand how that is an accident, because it like drains the power, but there's no storage unit or whatever. It just drains it into him. Like, what do you think? I'll get the power of the Chaos Emeralds, and then I'll just, nothing will happen from that.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
Another thing is that Dimitri was all like, oh, those fools. I understand. I know if you can drain it slowly, you can lower the island gradually. And then you know what he does? He turns up the power and drains it in an instant. Like, what? You weren't even following your own plan either.
Yeah, Edmund rushes in there and says, Dimitri, in the name of reason. And apparently when Dimitri's response is, reason had its day, brother, apparently he meant, like, literally all reason whatsoever. I am done with logic. I am returning to monkey.
Well, but later, when this story's continued, he acts all high and mighty, like, oh, my theory works. But maybe he... I don't know. I don't get it. It doesn't make
I am
sense.
an impossible being of logic and reason, and that's why I'm not reasonable.
So, yeah, all that aside, we get more lore on the Chaos Emeralds here because I don't know if it's been stated before, but this is the moment I always remember it from. This is when I was like, oh, so the Chaos Emeralds have infinite power individually, which means 12 is the same as 1, apparently, which is how he can drain 11 and then 1 still holds up the island. And more so than the last story in this issue, that's the biggest mind screw for my head. I never understood how that works. Why do you need 7 to go super if only 1 has infinite power or whatever?
Why did they even put 12 in there in the first place?
Thank you. That was like my biggest question. Why did they need 12 in the first place?
Maybe it was like...
didn't realize the properties because Edmund seemed surprised by that.
I guess? But the Echidnas are always described as this, like, hyper-intelligent, hyper-advanced civilization, which I have problems with that also, because as far as I've seen so far, it's not even explained how they got to that point. They just keep shoving it down your throat.
There will be an explanation.
Okay. Anyway,
but they seem to exist in a quantum state of hyper-intelligence, which is to say they never get any better or worse.
Fair enough.
Despite all of them, in this comic at least, making terrible decisions.
Yeah, well...
Yeah.
I mean, mostly Dimitri, but...
They follow the trope of super advanced society that's overconfident and actually doesn't know as much as they think, so...
I guess. This is an annoying thing in actually a lot of stories, even good ones, is where you have these hyper societies that are supposed to be, they are supposed to be taken down by their hubris, but they also say, look upon his creations and weep. So it's like, you kind of gotta do one or the other. But of course, this still isn't the end, because Dimitri's... He makes a big dark evil citadel, and that's a cliffhanger.
Yes, I am the supervillain now.
Yeah, I guess just because he felt like it. Maybe you get a certain level of power and you're like, alright, I gotta do at least a little villain shit. I mean, if you guys had godlike power, would you not build at least a few giant statues of yourself around the world?
I mean, probably.
That isn't too unreasonable. When we continue the story, I have more comments in that regard.
All right. Well, then let's go ahead and do that with Sonic the Hedgehog number 36. What the hell is that guy on the cover?
Yeah, I mean, doesn't look like a character from Sonic the Hedgehog at all, which maybe was the point, but still.
It looks like someone I'd fight in Elden Ring.
Yeah, he's got a spear that's got a fire infusion.
Yeah, a wood spear that then turns into a metal spear that shoots lasers.
Yep. So the story for this is Heart of Darkness, written by Penders, drawn by Mawini. The Zone of Silence, which is, to be clear, the Void from Sat AM, which is not the same Void that we had a few issues ago.
Right.
The Zone of Silence is growing out of control and threatening to engulf Mobius. Sonic and company form a tenuous alliance with Robotnik to stop the zone and hopefully recover King Acorn in the process.
So you stated when we had the Snively is in charge issue with the Void that it wasn't the same Void, and I didn't believe you because Robotnik said it was the same dimension. But then in this one, they go back on what they said there, and so you're right that it's a different location. But the fact that they had to clarify it makes it seem to me that they didn't think about that and like, oh, no, let's change it.
It's a retcon.
It's good old retconning.
It's dumb. We don't need to say anything else about it. Don't do this. Please plan your stories a little bit in advance.
No, don't plan them at all. It's funnier.
It has been funny.
No, it's true. I don't understand why it was an issue. Why do they need to fix that? Like, what difference does it make?
That's a really good question, and I've been thinking about that, and I cannot figure out why.
I think it's because the other Void story was written by Angelo De Cesare, and Ken Penders was thinking, I'm the important writer of this. I get to decide when we bring in the Zone of Silence.
You know what? Yeah.
You know, that's probably right.
That makes sense.
My gosh.
Yeah.
That said, there are a number of good things in this one, I think. I like to finally see Robotnik's general design as Julian in the past in a flashback.
Yeah. It's basically... No, it's not the same as in Sat AM, because in Sat AM he had the white outfit, didn't he?
Yes.
No, it's redesigned, yeah.
I do find it interesting also he has a really short mustache.
Yeah. Time and whatnot.
I guess.
There's a lot of recapping on what the Zone of Silence is and how the king got in there.
I mean, to be fair, was that really fully explained in this series yet?
No, it's fine.
That's what I thought. Yeah, it was explained in Sat AM.
This still isn't the full explanation because there's no mention of Kodos,
but there's a passing reference to Kodos.
Yeah, he is mentioned.
Oh, there is? Okay.
That part of
Robotnik makes a passing reference to his mentor Kodos.
Okay, my mistake. I even have it in my notes. Why did I make that mistake?
I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it might as well have not been mentioned because I have no idea who the fuck he is.
Well, it actually
That's okay. I've read the comics and I barely remember who he is too.
I kind of do remember him because, well, I guess we get into it later, but he becomes very important later, or more important-ish. He joins a group that's important, and I was always like, what are you doing here? Because I guess I didn't see the setup very carefully. No, it actually reminds me of when Ixis Naugus is mentioned. He's just called Naugus in Sat AM, isn't he? Or is he called?
Yes.
Yeah, there's no Ixis. That was part of the concept design, but not in the show.
But he was set up in the flashback episode in Sat AM, so it's a little like that.
Yeah.
Here's a question. When Robotnik is like, we must destroy the Zone of Silence so that it doesn't destroy Mobius, why is Snively concerned about the king?
I mean, maybe he's just curious. He doesn't say, oh, we can't let the king die or anything. I think he just is like, what's going to happen to that guy?
I suppose so. It doesn't get answered, though.
No. So yeah, Robotnik's, he's got this like laser that he's shooting at it to keep it from expanding, and he's like, oh, you got to go in there with the energy inhibitor, which I always thought kind of looked like a bottle of hand soap. But they venture in and they get attacked by the night guy and his weird like reptilian monster pals.
Yeah, they look out of place too.
Yeah, I think that these guys are supposed to be like native inhabitants of the Zone of Silence.
Why would the Zone of Silence have native inhabitants?
Why not? I don't know. It's common.
I feel like a place like this wouldn't have anything living in it.
Well,
We
it
don't
does.
really get an explanation on
Yeah.
how, on the
Excuse
nature
me,
of its existence.
something that would have evolved in it.
Yeah, it's just weird.
This comic really doesn't deserve such speculation. But given the
Fair.
name, the Zone of Silence, it's like, you know, it's unnatural. It's got strange properties. I would treat it like, especially since it's used as a prison, it's sort of a place in limbo. So, you know, maybe when you're there, you don't get hungry or thirsty, and you just kind of exist there. I could see it being
I
something.
guess.
Yeah, maybe these guys just kind of came out of the ground or something. Although there's not really any ground in this version. There was in the Void, but they fight the night guy, and it's eventually they knock his helmet off, and oops, it's the king under there. But he does not have any memory of anybody, even his daughter.
That is such an out of the blue plot twist. Like, I don't know what they're doing.
Well, and it's funny because we later learn that the Zone of Silence has this sort of like madness aura about it, and there was a measure that will come up later that they took to keep their minds sane in the Zone of Silence all this time, but it clearly didn't work because the king has definitely lost his mind.
Huh. Funny.
But yeah, they turn on the hand soap bottle, and it makes a big crazy special effect, and they get out of there, but they do not bring the king back with them, and that's the end of the story. It's kind of a cliffhanger. I don't know if it's a cliffhanger, it's just that it's unresolved, I suppose.
Yeah.
Similar to the Void episode inside Am Again. They clearly are treading similar lines and putting a new twist on them.
Yeah, it feels like this story was made to let us know about the Zone of Silence without actually intending to do anything with it. Because it's not like they go right back there in the next episode.
No, you got to put that on hold for reasons.
But the other story in this issue is obviously the final part of A Sense of History, which this time Kantrovich has the writing credit. Did he not have it before? Yeah, no, he didn't.
Funny.
So again, I don't know what makes the difference, but the summary for this one is the final chapter of Echidna history details the collapse of Echidna society at the hands of Dimitri, now a chaos-powered despot. I like the word despot.
That's
So,
a good word.
you mentioned, oh yeah, when you have unlimited power, you know, make a tower. Sure, that's harmless enough. But when he's like, I shall now enslave the entire world, that's a bit much.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, are you not gonna put the island back down on the ground? Didn't you say you were gonna do that? Wasn't that the whole point of this? But no, he doesn't even consider it.
Time for logic is over, brother.
What do you even need slaves for? You have infinite power.
The time for logic is over, brother.
I suppose so.
They had that line just so you didn't have to think about any of this, but we're doing it anyway.
And speaking of not thinking, one of the things that I think is a little bit weird is that the way they talk about Dimitri and the stuff he did, basically his selfish use of the Chaos Siphon and the Chaos powers, it's kind of presented as like a genuine scientific achievement for some reason. And like the judge with the powdered wig legitimately does quote the Bible when like, go to the ant, thou sluggard, consider his ways and be wise. And it's like,
all right,
what are you saying? Is the message here science bad?
I mean, I assume so. Seems like...
I mean, because then it shows that the Echidnas deciding to just turn their back on all technology for no apparent reason.
Oh, because technology brought us here, and not the fact that one dude absorbed the Chaos Emeralds and went insane. Like,
yeah, it's just like,
This is the start of the very like culturally Christian writing in these books that has always been very weird and kind of out of place in Sonic the Hedgehog, but it's a weird thing because this is such a recurring theme, especially in the Knuckles solo comics, that it's like, you know, it's like I don't necessarily need something to align with my values in every way to enjoy it. You know, my problems with this run deeper than the themes. It's like, just... I like Chronicles of Narnia, but like those books philosophically do not align with me. They basically like excommunicate and stop talking about the older sister when she stops believing in Narnia in those books.
I think, to me at least, it's not that I have any problem with the use of this imagery. Or no, I do have a problem with the use of the imagery because it feels out of place. Or this themes, excuse me.
Yeah, like, how is he quoting the Christian Bible in this
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic scape?
Yeah. It makes me. One of my notes even says the echidnas seem to be some sort of technocratic theocracy almost.
Yeah, it's very weird. And here's the thing that's going to blow this wide open, is that this is something that Ken Penders said a couple months ago when people asked him about the religiosity of his writing. And his basic response was like, I'm not really a Christian, I don't have any real, like, belief in that stuff, which...
Okay.
I believe that he doesn't believe it, but I think that, again, it's a cultural thing that he's writing from a perspective of someone with that sense of morality. But he says his explanation for this is that the primary buyers of Archie Productions comics tended to be like Southern Americans and Christians, so he claims that writing all of this for a decade into his writing was him like trying to corner that demographic with Sonic the Hedgehog comics.
So let me get straight. He was saying that specifically about Archie Sonic or just Archie in general?
Archie in general, their buyers.
Gotcha. Okay.
Like Southern Christians.
Right.
And it's like,
oh, okay. Gotcha.
So it's like, that doesn't meet Sonic's that's
No.
not casting Sonic's net of appeal, because kids
No.
are the ones reading for the most part, and they don't care about that. They don't care about that being in their comics, even if they take going to church seriously. But
Right.
B, this is Ken Penders, and one of Ken Penders' things is that he likes to sell his comics and himself as, like, progressive, feminist, liberal stuff. And he talks about how much he likes, like, Hillary Clinton and Nancy Pelosi. And so that seems really weird when he's written this comic that is pretty stalwartly anti-science. That's the conclusion of this, is that they say, guess science led us the wrong way, let's blow up our city.
They raise up the stakes in this plot super high, but it's still a little side story. So they decide, and Dimitri even says as much. Oh yes, we must defeat the Chaos Emerald infused creature by just collapsing the castle on him from fire ants. Sure, It's a bit abrupt, and it's a little strange because, as we're going to see soon, they bring him back immediately. So why?
Yeah, it's literally the next story. So yeah, it's a very, very weird thing. But, you know, we learn that Knuckles is a distant descendant of Edmund, who was, I guess, the first Chaos Emerald Guardian, and he makes his way towards Mount Fate, which is the remains of Dimitri's citadel, and that's the end of the story. But that is it for Sonic Comics today, but we have more than just Sonic Comics today, because we also have the 3-issue miniseries, Sonic's Friendly Nemesis. I know you like those words, Bruce. Knuckles.
I hate that title so fucking much.
It's the worst.
Well, you only have to endure it for a couple issues.
It's just there's a word for friendly nemesis. It's rival.
Yeah. I will say I like the cover here with Knuckles and the Chaos Emerald.
Yeah.
I also like Archimedes just standing on fire, but also silhouetted, just sort of like photoshopped in next to him.
Yeah.
But the story in this trilogy, I think they're all rites of passage. I think that's the 3 parts of this. Yeah, that's all 3 of them.
Basically, yeah.
So part 1 here is Kantrovich and Penders, obviously. We get nice insert art of Knuckles after the cover. I really like that Spaziant drawing.
Yeah.
Kantrovich, Penders, Mowini. Knuckles fights his way through Archimedes' hideout to find his friends alive and well. Archimedes is a fire ant with a history of helping the echidnas. However, explanations are cut short when the party is crashed by Enerjack, the echidna demigod formerly known as Dimitri.
That just about sums it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward issue. I like all of these crazy traps, that any one of which could easily kill Knuckles, but Archimedes is just like, yeah, that's fine.
It's a rite of passage.
Oh boy.
I'm just imagining the exchange that, like, one of these, like, shuriken blades just hits Knuckles in the face and he just drops dead, and, like, Archimedes is like, oh, and like, the door opens behind him and Locke is standing there like, so, Archimedes, how are things going with Knuckles? And he's like, Um, I do like the way that Moini draws the recap of all this stuff, where he draws them the recap pages as like a literal floor that Knuckles walks across.
That's cool, but the Knuckles stuff tends to recap itself a lot.
It's it's an easy couple of
So,
pages.
so I can understand why though, because we're kind of doing these a disservice by reading them, on a weekly basis instead of like a monthly basis.
Well,
Or maybe
and in
not
this case,
disservice, but like they're not really designed to be binge read.
yeah, and in this case, a kid may pick up Knuckles number 1 without having picked
Right.
up Sonic numbers, 34, 35, 36. So it makes sense to have them.
Yeah, that makes sense. But when you're reading them all in chronological order and you're binge reading them over multiple a week, it does kind of do them a disservice when stuff tends to be recaps. It's like, oh, okay, well, I can skip like the first 3 pages of this issue because it's just a recap.
I mean, you might not care about this all that much, but I mean, I think it's like he mentioned how they integrate it as like the floor, which is cool.
I
They're a little
do
creative
like
with it.
that. That is pretty
And
cool.
I mean, they're not just straight up frames; they redraw the scenes, so
Yeah.
you get more art that way.
I can appreciate the way it's done this way by not just outright showing the same images, but instead like showing different art with just an explanation of what happened instead of just showing us the same frames again.
Yeah, and
So
thankfully
this is
Moini
not
is a better
bad.
artist than Penders.
Yes, I think this is, and I think this miniseries has been some of Moini's best art.
Yeah, it's pretty good, and I like the way that they frame, the different sequence with like Knuckles getting chased by the rolling rock as Mount Fate explodes. And you can
Yeah.
see it's like the top half of the pages are always Knuckles, and the bottom half is Enerjack slowly emerging.
I do like that.
That was really cool.
That is a neat.
I like the panel with Knuckles with a gun.
I love Knuckles' first thought when he sees his door is I guess he does to check to see if he could punch it, but the next thing is just, all right, let's shoot it.
Well, and the panel of him bringing out the gun, it's like there's nothing cluttering that panel, so you could just reuse that in any context.
Honestly, yeah.
I'm probably going to use it for this episode's thumbnail.
Honestly, that's a good idea.
But we finally get to Archimedes himself, and yes, he is an ant.
At first I was kind of disappointed by the reveal.
At first,
There's not going to be a butt to that, is there?
I guess the reveal itself I was disappointed by, but I did end up liking Archimedes in this series.
He's not like a bastard or anything. He's certainly nicer than Knuckles' dad.
Yeah.
And does give us some answers, but
yes, I appreciate that.
Having kidnapped Knuckles' friends and not letting him know that, like, oh, I'm actually not a threat to you.
That's a little sus. But the reveal is kind of like, oh, he's an ant. Yeah. But then it's like we get to know Archimedes. Like, okay, well, he's not bad.
Well, and I like that his reveal. They have to have him on a big screen so that Knuckles can be surprised by him, and they have a camera pointing at him for it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I want to be revealed, like, I don't know, for my next job.
Our only real mention of what his deal is just kind of, my people helped yours, which is like, I guess that's fine, but like, they don't say why or how.
Well, I think it's very intentional because, like, you can't have all the answers at once or whatever. It's instantly from Archimedes to, oh, and now Enerjack shows up. Like, there's almost no time at all. It's clear they're like, we can't drop all the details at once.
Yeah, I suppose he is meant to be interrupting. And, yeah, Enerjack. I have always appreciated the design of Enerjack. He has this sort of pharaoh thing going on.
Yeah.
And given that we have, very Egyptian-like Echidna ruins in Sonic 3, this is probably one of the most, like, could fit in a Sonic property designs for a villain in this series.
Yeah, I never really thought about Sonic 3's Echidna designs being Egyptian because I associate the Echidna past stuff with Sonic Adventure, and they're very Mayan in that.
Yeah, I'm just talking like Sandopolis he would fit for.
Yeah, no, I at this point in the game, as the games have been released, he probably wouldn't be all that out of place as like a boss in a Sonic game.
Yeah, I suppose in terms of theming, design, all that, you're right. It's pretty nice, but as we will see, in my opinion at least, There's not really much to him. Very generic. He stays
He
consistent
is
with his
kind of.
original characterization.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because he does look pretty cool.
And it's a case of, so this is something that works better with the retrospect of how they would retcon what Enerjack is, because he says the echidna scientist Dimitri is no more. Today Enerjack reigns supreme. And that's just like a throwaway line saying like I am more than Dimitri now. But they later canonize Enerjack as more of a sort of spirit that overtakes an overpowered echidna, which makes sense for a lot of things. That would make it make sense that he's not interested in protecting Angel Island. It would make sense that he's like a weird dictator all of a sudden,
Right.
and that, you know, Dimitri is kind of a different guy. And spoiler alert, there becomes other echidnas who become Enerjack later on. So I think that makes it work better, but I wouldn't say that, yeah, Lauren is right. His actual personality is pretty bog standard.
It's pretty one-dimensional.
See, that I like that. I like what you just brought up. That's the kind of retcon I like. That's, you know,
Yeah, that's not a bad
give
idea.
more context to previous stories and improve them retroactively. That is neat.
And, you know, if it's done well, that's pretty cool. But I'm guessing it's pretty safe to say that it's not entirely done well.
I actually kind of like it. I don't think it's bad.
Okay.
It will be a bit, though. So Enerjack shows up, bodies everybody, basically. It's like the Chaotix got kidnapped, and then immediately they are then also defeated again, and Knuckles is teleported away from them. So it's like, we get them back just to lose them again.
The Chaotix in this miniseries are basically just, they feel like they're just supposed to be Knuckles. One of his like 2 reasonings for hunting down Enerjack, to get the Chaotix back and also to stop him.
Yeah, the amazing human MacGuffins.
Basically.
But yeah, Knuckles and Archimedes get teleported to the desert. I guess this is Sandopolis, maybe? It's still on Angel Island, so...
They showed Sandopolis at one point. It wasn't just...
Oh, yeah.
That was a different artist, though.
Oh, yeah.
And therefore an entirely different universe.
It's so stupid.
There must have not been very much communication between the artists or something.
Obviously not.
Well, and it's still different, because on the cover of Knuckles #2 here, there definitely weren't giant Dune-style sandworms in Sandopolis.
They're on Arrakis.
Yeah. I mean, it's a cool cover.
It is a really cool cover.
I was going to mention, yeah, that's kind of random, but it is an awesome cover.
But Rites of Passage Part 2, same team. Archimedes and Knuckles journey through the desert as Enerjack enacts his plan to recreate the city of Echidnaopolis in his vision. Upon arriving, Knuckles finds a hollow shell of the ancient city populated by machines. Enerjack's citadel, on the other hand, is guarded by the now mind-controlled Chaotix.
I feel like saying was guarded by the Chaotix is kind of giving them too much credit.
Oh, 100%. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Yeah, well, there's not that many bridges to cross, to be honest. You know, we've got a couple more pages of recap, which are still fine, but now it's not even a floor anymore. They're just kind of floating in space.
It's,
you know, we fight our sandworm, and then they cook and eat it.
I feel like a sandworm wouldn't taste all that great. I don't know. That's just me.
When you're in the desert, you don't have much choice.
That's true.
Between this and Underground, we've seen that Knuckles is willing to eat some things he wouldn't expect.
I mean, Knuckles has never seemed like a picky eater.
No, he tries to eat Archimedes later.
Yeah, I was waiting for that.
That's true.
Okay. So you mentioned they have the flashback, but it actually, the flashback adds further information, actually, that is new. Because they talk about how, apparently, the ants were integral in the separation of Echidnaopolis from the Earth.
Yes,
yeah.
It's really weird. I think part of what I was saying that I dislike Archimedes, and that's only sort of true. Mostly I just dislike looking at him because ants in this series look really weird.
Yeah, kind of.
It's the fact that their limbs taper off realistically, but they still have 6 of them and still have, abdomens and thoraxes and shoes.
Yeah, unlike the other characters where they try to anthropomorphize them a bit. I mean, they do with Archimedes to an extent, but he very much looks like he shouldn't be standing upright, but he is. It doesn't work for me.
Well, it kind of looks almost like he should have 4 legs and 2 arms. Like,
Maybe.
still be standing upright, technically.
That would work a little better, I think.
He's, like, still technically standing upright, but he's still quadrupedal.
Well, and it's just, this is also a comic which contains Charmy B, so, you know, a character who has
True.
4 limbs and a mammal-like muzzle and nose, so it's like, if you're willing to make those decisions.
The designs are not super consistent.
Yeah.
It's beating a dead horse at this point, complaining about the designs.
Yeah.
On
I'm going
a
to keep doing it,
positive-
though.
I mean, so will I.
No, I mean, why not? On a more positive note, I like that they continued the whole split view thing as Enerjack builds the city from pages 1 through 15 at the bottom while Knuckles is doing other stuff. That's neat.
Other
That's pretty
stuff
cool.
is definitely the right word for it. He sees a vision of Locke which points him to an oasis which also disappears, even though it was still a real oasis.
Yeah, those real real things as
Yeah.
as happens.
Yeah, and the Citadel city is it's populated by much more boring-looking robots than we usually see from Robotnik, even in this comic.
Yeah, it does kind of feel like Enerjack more built something to rival Robotropolis and then stocked it up with a bunch of bootleg swap bots.
You like that we cannot escape the gratuitous references as the marching robots are chanting the chant from the Wizard of Oz.
Oh, which is weird because it's like you'd think that they'd go for like, you know, a reference to a sci-fi B movie because that's what they look like. They look like, you know, something out of like maybe the 40s.
Mm.
Because definitely before like The Day the Earth Stood Still, they're less modern than that.
Yeah.
But we rampage through the city beating up robots and well, Knuckles gets surrounded and they're like, oh, we better just get out of here, which they start to head toward the Citadel inside, and Knuckles just randomly gets punched in the face. And it would have been an amazing line if, like, after he gets randomly punched in the face, he's like, oh, Sonic, why are you here?
Oh my gosh, that would be excellent.
No, instead I think it's Mighty that punches him,
The arm's yellow, so I have to believe that's
which
him.
is in character for what we've decided Mighty's character is.
Yeah,
I have nothing better to do, so I'll punch my friend.
that's right.
Yeah.
Well, as we'll see in the next issue, they do actually retain their personalities, even though they're
do,
like
yeah.
controlled. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. No.
Yep. And that is exactly where this next issue picks up with Knuckles number 3 here. And this cover is a little weird because, like, I don't know if it's the archives coloring, but there's this weird, like, sort of airbrushed fuzz on specifically like the Chaotix eyes and like the raindrops.
The Chaotix eyes, I can get that because they're just trying to show brainwashing or
That's it.
mind
exactly.
control.
Yes.
But I don't know why the rain. It kind of makes it look thick and
Milky.
yeah.
Give it that
It's not the
impact, I
worst
don't know.
rain we'll be getting on one of these covers like that.
Oh, I've seen. I
Oh,
think
no.
I know which one you're talking about. Yeah, that's fair.
Is that a big statue of Dimitri in the back?
Yeah.
Well, actually,
No, wait.
He's holding something. I think it may be like an Echidna Statue of Liberty.
It's a kid. It's an
perhaps.
Echidna Christ the Redeemer.
So it may. I think it probably is supposed to be Dimitri, but because it's ambiguous, I'm gonna say it's not because given that he's like Dimitri is dead, it doesn't make much sense that it would be of him.
Well, and you can't really see his hair enough to judge because Dimitri has these like coiled dreads that wrap around. So it's like if I saw those, I could. Differentiating between Echidna designs is going to become a fun game as the series goes on.
That is certainly true.
But our final part of Rites of Passage, I didn't write a summary for, apparently. Knuckles fights the Chaotix. They get unbrainwashed, but they don't really contribute so much to the rest of the story because then Knuckles has to face off against Enerjack. But a combination of the ants and the, yes, still alive, Locke ends up basically launching Enerjack into space on the top of the tower, which is a rocket.
Mm-hmm. For some reason.
Yeah, that's my impromptu summary. So now I'm scrolling back to the beginning because I had to do that while skimming the comic quickly.
I mean, you're not wrong. That's pretty much what happens.
Apologies, but there is a detail that is inaccurate there. I had to double check. The Chaotix don't get unbrainwashed until Enerjack is ejected into space.
Oh yeah, that is true.
Oh, I guess I said that out of order. Sorry. But yeah, so the thing that I wanted from Enerjack and all this, I wanted to know, why is now the time that he's coming out from under the mountain? Because he basically has just been waiting here. He was not actually trapped under there when the Citadel fell the first time.
Knuckles?
So I have to assume he was training because he has a mention of like, my powers are much increased since the past. I mean, that could just be talk, but
I
I
had
think
to
he's
finish
being
building my armor all this time.
But yeah, he built his armor. Got to get that perfect design, which it does look cool. Although I don't know
think
about
Spaziant must
many,
have
many, many
designed him.
years. So I figure, he was getting a better grasp of his emerald powers or whatever.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough.
Don't want to lose to ants again immediately. Although,
Yeah.
well, this story definitely falls in the pitfall that a lot of stories do with me, featuring godlike beings, which is they just get done in by one really stupid thing, like,
The power of friendship.
The power. This isn't. I guess it is. Yeah, I guess it is the power of friendship.
Yeah,
To an
it's the
extent.
power of
I think Knuckles and
Archimedes'
Archimedes.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
There's just a moment when Knuckles is like, "See ya, nerd," to Enerjack, and jumps off as the place is lifting off. You cannot tell me he was literally shown to fly. Can't he just jump off as well?
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's like when we later see other echidnas with this level of chaos power, they can. So many of them can just teleport.
Well, I won't punish the story for later information, but
yeah,
sure.
That's fair. But no, it's like it's not even that he says "see ya" and jumps off. It's that the ground under him breaks down and happens to fall, and then he just glides down. So it's like there's a hole right there that you can jump through.
Yeah. I mean, I assume he returns again. Well, you said at least the entity does, or whatever. I don't know, this version of Enerjack.
Oh, no, this version is Dimitri, and we gotta have Dimitri around for lots of stuff. So this version of Enerjack is just going to be hanging out in space for a while until Ken Penders wants to bring him back.
So, this guy is insane, right? So I have to imagine, I mean, you mentioned why did he stay in a mountain for so long? Maybe it's intentional. He's like, okay, you've won this day. Now I can be cool again and return after a while. Like, that's just his style. He got to leave and return. It's more fun that way.
Well, and weirdly, by the time he gets back, he takes the Dimitri stuff more seriously. So I liken it to like a reverse Shadow the Hedgehog. Rather than falling from space and losing his memories, he gets sent to space and gains some memories.
Speaking of memories, there's a line from Enerjack that's, I think, supposed to be intimidating, but it comes off more as pathetic. He's like, "I have forgotten more than you have learned," to Knuckles. You've forgotten a lot, I guess.
Damn, bro.
Yeah, I don't even know what it's supposed to be a diss, like, you've learned so little, I've forgotten more things than that, but it's like, the average person has forgotten so many things.
Yeah, it really comes off as Enerjack being full of himself.
There's just some general awkwardness with him. It's like, I like the design, but there's this recurring problem where they draw the sort of nose plate of his face, or like the above the mouth part. They seem to interpret that as like the top of his mouth, so it looks like he has a weird beak.
Oh wait, that isn't a beak?
That's what it looks like to me.
No, he's an echidna. But, anyway, so Enerjack launched into space. Everybody congrats Knuckles, and Knuckles has this weird line where he says, "It was a combination of things that added up when I put them together. My dad's story plus Archimedes plus Enerjack's. I never could have defeated Enerjack on my own." So it's like, it's Knuckles saying that he used the knowledge from all the people that he knew, and it's like, their words inspired me or something. But it's more that just somebody else did it for him.
No, he was just there.
He just existed for a lot of it.
I guess you just have to knock Enerjack on his ass if you want to get him out of there, as long as you have him on a rocket.
Basically.
He's gonna crash land on a planet Wheat, meet Karhim.
Yes, I'm sure Enerjack would make a fine addition to Karhim's collection.
They both talk mostly through screaming, so... Anyway, so yeah, and this is the technically real reveal that Locke was alive and was the hooded guy in the computer room. I didn't expect you guys to not know that last time, just because I thought that the way that Penders drew his face was so obviously similar to Echidna's, but now he's just straight up revealed. And his beard is a different color than the rest of his face, so it no longer looks like a tumor. So I'm good.
Yeah. More, I must watch from afar, I cannot interfere, whatever. Yeah.
isn't it the father's duty to look after his son? He says after his son just almost died in so many different ways.
Yep.
And yeah, no, that's the end of the Knuckles series. I guess we have a little like, you know, sequel hook of Enerjack flying through space and then like cackling, which like what? It's like if you want to do something, man, you can just jump off. You could just get out of there.
No, I'm sticking with my theory of that's his style. He's like, haha, he's thinking of his return already. He's like, oh, that'll be so great.
I'll tell you what it
He's
makes me
thinking
think
about
of.
his return, but he's not actually doing anything about his return.
No, you
No,
gotta
it's
give time
it's
for it
that
to
part.
build.
Sure.
It's that part of the Namek saga where you're just watching Goku train on the spaceship for like days.
He's probably doing more training. Yeah.
He needs to drink a refreshing heat-tap. Um, so yeah, the Knuckles series. What do we think of it?
I enjoyed it. It was, I think, the first time in these comics that I really was at a point where, so I've been reading these one issue a day. This was the first time where I could not put down the issues because they were legitimately kind of interesting to read.
Yeah, I think this is among the better things Penders has done. You know, I say Penders, but it's also Mawini really pulled his weight here. I think he did a great job with this. Other than the Enerjack beak, but I think it just had enough moving pieces and just different weird elements. It managed to keep things moving a little bit better than a lot of Penders' work up to this point has.
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked it pretty well. I will say, similar to the other miniseries, I had not read this until now. So it was, again, a trip to finally get all the pieces falling into place. And Enerjack, to me, I was like, I knew he returned, but I never read anything more about him. So it was cool to see him in more than just like, 2 seconds as a side throwaway thing. So yeah, it was engaging.
Yeah, and it's like it does shed a light on things because like, okay, like maybe the Chaotix are written about as boring as like even Sally's lame friends. But being Sega characters ensures they're at least more visually engaging, and they do at least get to, even if they're just obstacles for Knuckles to fight, that's still more than nothing. And I think my takeaway from all this is not necessarily that everything about this is perfect, because boy is it not perfect, but that I understand why out of all of the miniseries to get an ongoing spin-off series, I understand why Knuckles was the one.
And they've really pushed the idea of the echidnas having the most lore. So
yeah, which is, I guess, just a happy coincidence with also being true about the games.
Yeah.
Which, of course, means that there's actually 2 different sets of lore that they're going to have to awkwardly scramble to keep together when Sonic Adventure comes out, but that's not exactly their fault.
One of my favorite parts of these comics is when they try to adapt the games. Not like we've been seeing where you see a character and it counts as an adaptation. They go a little harder than that later on, and they have to bend over backwards sometimes. It's amazing. The
Sonic Adventure adaptation is a very fun to read mess.
Yes.
But yeah, no, I had fun with today's comics, and we are going to have even more fun next time, because we have reached not a milestone issue, but a milestone in this era of the comics. Because next week we have The Peak. It is the comic. It is the most loved and well-respected and amazing thing in the early era of Archie Sonic. Because next week we have, well, a couple more issues of whatever. But then we have Mecha Madness. It's here.
Heck yeah.
It is going to be so much fun, because that is both a full issue and a full special of great artwork from Spaziant, but also just the best fight. It is the best fight.
All right, well, you just better not disappoint.
I don't think it will.
And on that note, we're going to leave you guys hanging, I guess, for that next episode. But we're done for tonight. So thank you all so much for watching. Feel free to share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, you can always reach us at deepdivezonepod@gmail.com or at deepdivezone on Twitter. I may have to change that to something else given recent events, but we'll see what happens. Have a great night, and we'll see you next week.